we live in a very different world now where we're dealing with rampant fraud. This industry in general is filled with fraud. We're constantly dealing with wire fraud, now there's a scam with fraudulent sellers. So one of the most important things is we cannot, under any circumstance, have a seller sign unless they're using one of our certified notaries.
Welcome back to Living Albuquerque, and this episode is What Happens in Closing and What the Heck is Escrow Anyway? With Tara Ross, Senior Escrow Officer and Branch Manager of Title Alliance of New Mexico.
Hello.
Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to because we're continuing that behind the scenes conversation about what actually happens during a real estate transaction. Today, we're talking specifically about the part everyone is working towards, which is closing. For most people, closing can feel a little bit like a mystery. You know, it's the final step. You know, you're signing a lot of documents, but what is actually happening behind the scenes to get you there? So today we're going to walk through that process in a way that I think will make it much more approachable and hopefully understandable. So that's why I'm so excited to have Tara Ross joining me today. She plays a crucial role in every real estate transaction that she closes, whether you're buying, selling, refinancing. Tara is one of those people who brings a sense of calm and clarity to what sometimes can feel like a complicated process. And she helps guide transactions all the way through to the closing table. And she also records the deed in the county to make it your property or to make it the buyer's property, right? And then Title Alliance then ensures that deed that they just recorded up into the time of recording. As someone who has a close relationship with Tara, I can say firsthand that she's incredibly knowledgeable, detail-oriented, and truly cares about making sure everything comes together smoothly in her transactions. We all depend on her to do so much. And she does it with professionalism, kindness, and grace. Whenever I get a chance to choose Tara as the escrow person on the transaction, I do. And it's for all those reasons. She's an important part of my team. Also, Title Alliance doesn't have the typical junk fees that you can get with some other title companies, and which saves money on both ends. Now, title fees are regulated by the state as far as what they can charge for owner's title policy, title commitments, but there's a lot of other fees that get added, and Title Alliance doesn't do that, so that's one of the reasons why I use them. So, Tara, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to do this. Thank you.
So Tara, before we get into details of what you do, I'd love to start a little more personally, because one of the things I love about Albuquerque and something this podcast really focuses on is the people that make the city. You are an Albuquerque native, is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised. Actually, second generation. Both my parents are born and raised here too.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. Great. How did you get into the industry?
So that's actually kind of a funny story because I don't think anyone ever grows up to be an escrow officer. Is not a job that I don't think anyone even knows about, really. So I was a nanny out of high school, and the lady I was a nanny for was an escrow officer. So I took care of her two kids. One was in elementary school, and one was an infant. And so I took care of them until the infant, she was about 2.5, 3, I want to say. And then her grandma quit her job and started to take care of her instead. And so her mom said, well, I'm going to get you a job was Albuquerque Title at the time, and not to age me, but typed up my application on a typewriter. And so I started at Albuquerque Title as a receptionist back when I was like 9. Oh gosh. Oh no, I think I was 20. I want to say maybe 2021. So way back then. And
yeah, so you've grown up in the industry.
Grew up in the industry, yeah. So started the very bottom, and then just did a little bit of everything and moved pretty much. Started Albuquerque Title, then we became Land America, was Fidelity. I worked at Fidelity a long, long time until I had the opportunity to move over here to Title Alliance, and I've been loving it ever since.
And now you're the Senior Escrow Officer and Branch Manager. That's really exciting. You've grown up in the industry like so many of us, it sounds like. So what do you enjoy about what you do?
So definitely the best part, is having a closing. This morning was a perfect example. So as a first-time home buyer, he had his brother here with him. Everyone, they videotaped the whole entire closing. He was just so excited. his first home, saved up for it, and just being able to be a part of that experience and be able to walk somebody through that process when they come in nervous and they're feeling a little overwhelmed, and then being able to like sit with them and calm them and just get them through that part, because sometimes people just feel like the closing process, they get a little, it sounds so, they have this stack of papers in front of them and all of these words they've never heard before, and it just seems a little much, especially if it's the first time they've ever done it. And I like to be able to be a part of that process and know that I was able to help somebody get from point A to point B to C into home ownership, and know that tonight he's going to be, getting his keys to his first home, and he was just so excited. So by far, that's my favorite part, is being able to be part of that home ownership and all of that.
Great. That's why I wanted to do this episode with you, so that, could take some of that mystery out of it. It's like, because it's like, as the word escrow is used in so many different ways. It's like, what is that? Is it just a catch-all phrase y'all make up? So I want to clarify so much of that. So when people think about buying or selling a home, they think about the realtor, they think about the lender, they may think about the inspectors, but this whole other piece of the transaction that happens through escrow, not so much, right? So how do you explain what an escrow officer does? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because it's a joke. Even my kids to this day, they like don't know what I do. It's like, because it's just that, it's like you said, it's that mystery part. People to this day ask me like, "Oh, can you show me a house?" or "What are the mortgage rates?" I'm like, "Nope, that's not me. That's not what I do." But what we do is so important. I always feel like we're kind of the coordinator, if you will, between everybody, because we're going to tie all those units together. We tie the realtors, we tie the lenders, we tie the inspectors, the buyers, the sellers, everybody, the insurance agents, all the vendors that have to get paid. We tie everybody together to make sure from the very beginning of the process, when that real estate purchase agreement is signed, to the very end, to when the deed is signed and recorded with the county and that home is transferred from the current homeowner to the new buyer. So I feel like we're the transaction kind of coordinator, if you will. Like, we're the ones that have to tie it all together. But we have two folds. That's the escrow part, and then the title part is we're going to make sure that through that process, the person who is purchasing the property is buying a property that's free and clear of any issues, when we say issues, encumbrances. We're going to make sure that they're buying a house that's not going to have an uncle from somewhere is going to like come 3-4 years down the road and say, "Hey, I have a deed to this property. This is actually my house." We're going to make sure that, when you buy that house, it's your property. And we also, in the same sense, that protects the seller too, because when you sell your house, you're not going to have to deal with title issues 3-4 years down the line. You want to make sure when you get your proceeds, you're done. That is, you move on with your life, and that house is no longer a problem. But that's kind of how I always feel. It's like we're just kind of the transaction facilitator, if you will. Like, we tie everybody together. Throughout a day, I think we probably deal with 200-300 emails, and it's between everybody on that transaction, from both agents, sellers, buyers, attorneys, inspectors, insurance agents, homeowners insurance. I'm trying to think of everybody else who sometimes gets involved. Lenders, definitely. I probably deal with, that's who I work most closely with, probably.
Yeah, then you have your title officer there on the back end, I'm sure, with sending out things that you need to, like, go figure this out, find out this,
Yeah.
It's such an important role that you do, and one that really carries a lot of responsibility. It seems like so much falls back on you guys. We both, as realtors, lenders, we all depend on the escrow officer so much, and that can be hard. I appreciate how you navigate the stress of it all, and professionalism and compassion you have for your customers. It really is. You have an immense amount of patience, and I'm always grateful for that for all of us. Can you walk us through what escrow is actually doing behind the scenes once a property goes under contract, and explain what title insurance is and why it's now pretty much required? It's required on all loans, but why it's a good idea anyway.
Yeah. So on the second part of that question, what title insurance is and what's required. So, it's required only if there's a lender involved. But, even if you were purchasing a property cash, it would be highly, highly stressed to get that. I mean, I would never let a family member ever purchase a piece of property without ever getting title insurance, because we've heard so many horror stories where that has happened, where, somebody will just sign a deed over to somebody thinking, oh, this is fine. But like I said, then you have that issue of, you have quiet title issues and things like that come up. But so why title insurance is so important to me is for that reason, is even if you think you're buying a piece of property that might be so straightforward, you might do like a quick search on your own and see like, oh, okay, there's no issues, there's nothing wrong with this property. You really need an expert who's going to be able to do a more thorough search. We have what's called a plant, where our expert title examiner is able to look, and they don't just look at the property, they're looking at the seller's names, they're even looking at the buyer's names. They're able to find liens that are attached, because even if you have a piece of property that you think is free and clear, you might have a seller who has a federal tax lien attached to them. That attaches to that piece of property. So if you are not going to get title insurance and you bought this piece of property, that now becomes your problem without title insurance. What title insurance does is protect you, is if, say, we missed that lien, we're now the ones who have to deal with that or rectify that. I had a situation, I don't know, about 7-8 years ago, where somebody bought a piece of property and they were just trying to like kind of piece together some land up in the mountains. So they were just buying like tiny little parcels here and there. So they didn't think it was a big deal. They were just buying like tiny little areas. What they didn't know is one of these tiny little parcels that they purchased, they just did a deed with I think it was a daughter of somebody who had passed away, and they thought they inherited this little piece of land up in like, I think, Edgewood or somewhere. And it turns out the person who's deceased had deeded that piece of land to her and also to his wife. So they both had a deed to that. So now he had tried to put together for all of this land, but this tiny little corner was owned by 2 people, and it causes huge issue. Now you had to go and do what's called a quiet title suit, because they had to go to court. You have to get a judge to decide who actually owned that. And he was like, well, what does this mean? And I was like, well, you didn't get title insurance. There's, you have to deal with this. There's nobody you can fall back on. And so it took him probably a couple of years to unwind that, and a lot of money, when all he did was buy this tiny little piece of land that ended up tying up his whole huge area that he was purchasing, that he can now no longer sell. So that to me was such a good example of why title insurance is important.
What a nightmare. I mean, that kind of stuff keeps us up at night. Yeah, it's like somebody sells something and they think they're not even trying to do anything fraudulent. They think they have the right and that's their land, and then they don't.
Like the situation, like I don't think the person was trying to, defraud him or anything. It was just, I think it was just, and you always hear, especially like families where they're trying to like take this huge piece of area and they're like splitting it up between all of their family members, and sometimes they don't do it right, and that's when it comes to us to make sure it's done correctly.
Yeah, you and I actually had an instance of that where it was a wrong legal address on an estate was like deeded. And so really when we push came to shove, it was like they didn't, we had to get that probated and get all that changed, because it's just as simple as doing a deed wrong, right? Yeah. There's been several situations where you've like, I run it through you first, right? And Rick, the title examiner, goes through it. And then it's like, oh, wait, there's a mistake on this deed. And then so we get to get that fixed before we get to a transaction even. And so it's so valuable.
And that is what's so great about you, because you always have the forethought, let's get this fixed before we even get that listed, especially when it's complicated.
Right. Try to head off any problems before they're a problem, for sure. So if somebody has a claim on title insurance, what happens? Like, what do they do?
So if you have a claim, it depends. So like so Title Alliance, our underwriter is First American. So you'd actually make a claim against our underwriter, which would be First American. And then they do an investigation to see if there's actually a legit claim. Like if we basically missed something, and usually it would be, probably the most prime example is going to be if there's a lien missed, if say if the title search didn't pull up a mortgage against a property or a lien against somebody, that's a legit lien, that's a legit claim, then we have to, in essence, pay for that, and we have to correct that and make it right to make sure that property is your property, and we take care of that lien.
Oh, that's, yeah, it is.
And
It's
it's
so,
huge. So when there is a claim on title insurance, they're few and far between, but when there's a claim, they're usually big.
yeah. So let's talk about what you're coordinating during that escrow period. An escrow period is the time that you go under contract, right, until closing. So that's the escrow period. And that's why she's an escrow officer. Um, so you do what you do. Explain like what is a title search, the title commitment, and, and then what are the exceptions to those?
Yeah, so it's pretty at the very beginning. The transaction would start with the purchase agreement. So we'll receive that from typically the listing from you or it depends on
Mhm.
the side you're on, but the listing agent or the selling agent. And then once we get that, we'll open up a transaction and we start our search. And what that does is we'll send that to our title examiner, and they then look at what I had mentioned earlier. It's called a plant, which to me is like a big library of records, if you will. And that is going to go and see, they're going to create what's called that title commitment. So they go and look at the property, and again, like I was saying earlier, the buyer's name, seller's names, and they're going to look and do a search on all of that and pull anything of record. And how they do that is pull up document. Now, it's kind of extensive, but they look at the legal description, they look at names, and they're just trying to like find anything that matches, and they pull everything. So what he does is pull everything and then kind of whittles it down into what's called a title commitment, and then brings that back to us. That usually takes a few days, and provides us what's called all of our requirements, which you're going to see on the title commitment on the schedule B. B. I'm like
Yeah,
B.
there's an A, B, and
Yeah,
C.
there's a, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so the requirements to me is going to be like our sheet, like of what we have to do in order to get from point A to point B to closing. So that's like this is here that we have to get all of this done before we could go to the closing table. So typically it's going to go over if the seller has any mortgages, we're going to have to make sure we get payoffs on those mortgages. It's going to let us know if the buyer has any liens against them. Typically those are never good because usually sometimes those are surprises that nobody wants to see. But those are going to be tax liens or transcript of judgment, things like that. Those are more rare. And then it's going to let us know if we're going to need to order surveys, things like that. So it's kind of going to be a code of like what we have to do in order to get to that title and then to closing. The exceptions page is typically going to show what the recorded documents against the property. Like, so if there's easements attached to that property, we're going to say we're going to insure this property except for this easement that's already attached to it. So if there's like a road maintenance agreement attached to this property, or there's already an encroachment agreement attached to this property, the exceptions are going to show you what all of those easements and things are. If there's covenants and restrictions attached to the property, so it's going to let you already know like all of these type of things and what exceptions mean are just exactly what the definition says. We're going to insure everything except these things.
Yeah, here's the exceptions to the policy. It's an insurance policy, right?
Insurance policy.
Yeah. And is that why you always like one thing that I get a call from, even if I talk to folks about it, they're like, there's somebody at the title company and they're asking me for my last 4 digits of Social Security. Is that real? Do I give it to them? Yes, give it to them. So why, and is that why you're asking for that? Is so that you can, like, if there's judgments, like on a common name, like Jennifer Wilson, right? A common name. I come up with a list of judgments and none of them are mine. Is that what you're doing?
Exactly. That's like one of the most common phone calls we get, and it's like usually a panicked phone call. Like we'll send out a commitment, and people like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have a lien against me," and like they panic and they freak out. And it's like, I know it's okay because it's a common name, and that's why we try really hard to get that number prior to the social. So what we want to do is get the last 4 numbers of someone's social, and that's able gives us ability to try to weed out a lot of those common name judgments. Because like you said, like a Jennifer Wilson, or if you get a Joe Smith, you're going to get a whole bunch of liens because they're what are called common name liens. Because any lien or judgment filed against that person and any combination of that name, I mean, if it's a Joseph, Joe, Jose, whatever, Smith, we're going to pull that combination. So any sort of ability, any way that that name pops up, we're going to pull it. So that's why those last four, social or date of birth, those two things help us weed that out right away. So we could try to send out a more clean commitment so we don't send out a panicked, when people start like, oh my gosh, I don't have this lien. Sometimes it doesn't work because sometimes liens just don't have socials listed on it, and then that's when we have to do a little bit more detective work, and we have to literally get on the phone and start calling these attorney offices and literally say, hey, is this our Joe Smith? This is our last four of our social, and we literally have to call every single one of those liens and cross-check them and see if they belong to our party.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, if you get one, sometimes you'll have one like 8, 9, and it's a lot. And then sometimes you have it's fun when you have an attorney. They're gone, they're going out of business, and you have to now find out who took that lien over because they don't just go away. You still have to deal with it. So it's a lot of detective work.
For sure. So, what do you think would surprise people the most about your role, or anything that you would like to share about it?
I think they would be surprised just about how much we have to do behind the scenes. I think so many people, like when I tell people what I do, which it makes sense, they just picture us in closing. They say, "Oh, you just sit there and say, here, sign this, sign this." That's literally what all of anyone thinks I do. They really have no idea how much we have to do to get to that table. There's so much work that goes on prior before we even are able to get to closing. And then after we're done closing, the amount of work that goes into getting the file, what we call funded and recorded and dispersed. And even after the file's funded, recorded, and dispersed, there's still a lot of work that goes into that file. Sometimes we'll have taxes that we're holding. We have, there's policies that we still have to issue afterwards. We're dealing with audits, and there's just so much more detail in this job than anybody I think has any idea about it. So there is a lot to it that it's a very, very highly detail-oriented job.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the same thing I think on the real estate end. It's like there you can do 99 things right, but it's that one I you forgot to dot that comes back and gets you. So yeah, it all has to be super thorough for sure. But so let's talk about closing itself, right? For many people, that's the part they're most focused on, and sometimes the most nervous about it as it approaches. Like everything from when do I give my money to when do I get the keys? How long do I have to move? Right? I heard the title company is going to take care of the utilities. Um, so what actually
Or
happens
the insurance. That's been my new one lately. I'm like, yeah.
has been what?
So I've been getting a lot of, which is kind of interesting, of sellers calling, asking, wondering why I didn't cancel their insurance.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a new one. I'm like, so I'm gonna have to like bring that into part of my closing. I'm like, I don't cancel your insurance.
Not for my people
Not
because
for other people. You always say that in closing.
yeah, and Mike Tejas, and I just covered all that in the episode before.
That's
So
fine.
you're gonna wait until you hear from me,
Yeah.
and then you get to cancel your own insurance, and they can backdate it. It's usually once I tell you the deed's recorded, where you actually get your funds, then cancel your insurance. So,
But,
so
yeah.
so
So
so if I'm understanding this correctly, what's leading up to closing, right? Is you guys are doing title searches. You're putting those commitments together. You're taking, those all everybody's names that have judgments that aren't really yours, and you're getting those dismissed unless they are. You're making sure there's no liens on the property. You're making sure that the person who's selling the property has the right to sell the property.
yeah.
And then you're getting any issues like that taken care of, which takes work from both realtors, both buyer and seller, usually, if depending on what it is, right? And then you're also we're sending you addendums as we're negotiating on repairs, right? Or credits. We're sending you, here's this invoice, collect from that person. Here's that invoice, collect from that person. Don't forget to pay me, right? I mean, you're getting all of this thrown at you. And so what are you doing with all that?
So we're basically collecting all of that in our file. We're creating a file. We have everything is paperless. So we have a folder that we keep for each file. We have a online in our computer, a folder that we keep all of our tabs on. We have an invoice, and then we're also working with the lender too at the same time closely. We're getting all them title work. We have to send them title work and make sure that they're all set on their end. And then when we're getting real close to closing, that's when we really start coordinating with the lender. So that's when we get what's called their closing disclosure, and we start actually balancing, where we are putting together their numbers, our numbers, and then all of those invoices, addendums, credits, commissions, all the things that you just mentioned. And then we're putting that all together on our closing statement and creating a final figure for both buyer and sellers. So that's leading up to usually 2-3 days, hopefully, if we're lucky, before closing, so we could get some final numbers out to everybody. And then if not, sometimes it's a little bit more down to the wire, which we don't like, but hopefully usually a couple of days prior to closing, we try to get those numbers out to everybody. Once we have all of those numbers done and we have what's called a balanced closing disclosure with the lender, then, and with the lender, this is also the thing that a lot of people don't understand. We're getting phone calls from people like, why aren't we closing? It's our closing date. Some of these things are, that's kind of when things kind of get out of our hands. It's like, well, we're, once we're what's called our clear to close, it doesn't mean the lender's set and clear to close on their end. They still have to do all their things. They have to work with their underwriters and make sure they're ready to go. But once they're ready to go and we're ready to go, they give us a closing package, and then we schedule our closings, put everything together, meaning the closing documents for both buyer and seller. We receive the lender's documents, but then we have to create our closing documents for the buyer, and we have to create closing documents for the seller. And then we actually then perform our actual closing, which is my favorite part. So that's the part I like, which is the actual physical, like what I was saying earlier, the actual closing, where I get to sit in the room and actually perform the best part of my job. Grandkids, or they're on some adventure somewhere.
So what are all the documents people are signing? Well, we're circling back to something you said about, scheduling closing. So typically here, I know it may be different in other states, but you have a buyer's closing and a seller's closing separately. You're not all at the closing table together, correct?
So typically, and that's a question we get all the time, like who closes first? It really doesn't matter. We love to have everyone close earlier in the day if possible, but that's just not always the case. And the reason for that being is, we're working with the county, meaning the county closes at a certain time. So if everyone closes early enough in the day, we could usually get the file funded and reported within the same day. But if not, then it just falls into the next day. But yeah, it doesn't matter if the buyer or seller signs first. Sometimes we have sellers signing out of state. Sometimes we have buyers signing out of state. Actually, I have 2 of those this week, which is unusual because one was short. But yeah, usually we don't have that as often. But those are always a little bit more of a pain. But it's just up to schedules, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. And so when you talk about people being out of state to close, can they just go to their bank and get it notarized, or you're going to send them a mobile notary?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really important, and it has a lot to do with fraud. Back in the day, yeah, you used to be able just to like email documents to somebody, and they could literally just take it to their local notary, their bank, what have you, and get those documents signed and back. We live in a very different world now where we're dealing with rampant fraud. This industry in general is filled with fraud. We're constantly dealing with wire fraud, dealing with, now there's a scam with fraudulent sellers. So one of the most important things is we cannot, under any circumstance, have a seller sign unless they're using one of our certified notaries. So what we have to do is set up what we call a mobile notary, and we use a company that uses vetted notaries. So they're notaries that have already been certified and they have certain qualifications. And what we do is we send the documents directly to that notary. The notary then goes to the seller, to usually their home, place of business, get all the documents signed, notarized, and then they scan them back to us, and then they also FedEx them back to us. And then, which is kind of nice, the scan part, because we've had lots of issues in the past where FedEx is,
Yeah, that sounds really convenient too for out of state folks, because so they're not, missing a document when they print it or anything, or where the heck do I sign, and what, yeah.
I had a huge, back and forth with somebody once because they were really, and the fee is not a huge fee. I know, that sounds, I don't want to sound flippant about that because I know, sellers, it's like you're getting hit with this inspection fee, this fee, and it just feels like all these fees are adding up. And now here's another $150 fee. And, they really didn't want to pay that fee. But I had a really stressed importance because I've had so many instances, like what you said, where they'll take those documents to somebody else and they don't do it correctly. And so now we've lost 2 or 3 days and now they're paying additional interest on their payoff. We've missed deadlines. So it actually ends up costing people more money and time if you don't use somebody who knows what they're doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And one thing I tell folks too, whether they be a buyer or seller, it's like for the $150, can you fly here and get, for $150 with the time and everything, and to make sure that it's done correctly. I mean, because you guys are insuring that deed, and part of that is making sure that everything's done correctly and that the right people are signing.
And the issue is why it's important to us now is there's this pretty big scam, and it's usually with land, but there's basically not sellers, that's a problem, fraudulent people and they work with fraudulent notaries who are selling land that is not theirs. And yeah, it's happened, and it's never happened here in my company, but it's happened in my company out in, I think, Pennsylvania. And it literally went all the way through closing, and they used a fraudulent notary, and that's how they got away with it. And it was the person who sold it. They literally sold a piece of land that they did not own.
Jesus,
So,
scary. I know we have to deal with those and get those calls and stuff, and that's why everything. Even if I know the people, right? I
yeah.
still run a title search or package and everything beforehand because it's so scary. Now you touched on wire fraud. What's wire fraud?
So wire fraud is twofold. So wire fraud is basically the way it hurts our industry is it's buyers is usually who it targets. So when buyers are closing, they have to wire in typically large sums of money, and we have to send them our wiring instructions. And what happens, the fraud part is somebody will send out a fraudulent email, and it'll look like it's coming from me. Maybe they'll look like it's trying to come from you, like you'll say, oh, I'm sending this from my title company. But typically they try to imitate the title company. So they will like pull an email and I'll look like my header and all this. And they'll send an email to the buyer and say, you need to wire your funds. And it's always fast. So it's always like, send your money right now. And it's totally fraudulent wiring instructions, and it'll go off to like a mule type person where they send the money off to God knows where. And what's really scary about it is usually you don't get those funds back. If you do, it's going to take a crazy amount of time. And there's really nobody to fall back on because it wasn't, I don't want to sound not nice, but it was really nobody's fault but your own, because there's all of these warnings: do not send your funds unless you've done this and this and that and the other. So if you were to send those funds without doing those checks, you usually lose that money. And billions of dollars in this industry over the last years have been lost from people doing that. So what we do is we have to send all of our wiring instructions through what's called a secure portal. People get annoyed. I think everyone's more used to it nowadays, but in the beginning it was like, oh my gosh, this is such a pain, because you have to log in, download the instructions, call, verify, do all these things. But like I always tell people, it's only for your protection. And then on the flip side, when we have, like, say, those sellers who are signing remotely, I then have to, like, when we get wiring instructions back, I have to call those sellers and be like, hey, is this your actual wiring instructions? Because I want to make sure, I didn't see them sign that piece of paper. So I want to make sure that, nobody put down any false information and whatnot, because we always verify. If we ever get payoff instructions, anything like that, we always have to call and verify wiring instructions. And when I say verify wiring instructions, you call the source. You don't call the number that you received. I mean, whatever, you have to figure out a way to actually call that source and say, hey, are these your real wiring instructions? And sometimes it causes a delay. You might lose a day, but it's worth that, and other than losing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I always tell clients too, call me, not like I'm not going to get you the wire instructions. They're never going to come from me. I
Yeah.
don't want to see them, right? But call me to go, hey, I'm worried about this. Or is this really Tara's number that I call to verify?
Yeah.
Because they will put a fraudulent number on there.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
that's what I always think is so crazy is when people call the number on the thing to verify. I'm like, no, no, that doesn't do you any good. Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's a scary industry because there's so much money involved, and yeah, but that's why it's so important. I mean, sorry, but that's why it is so important to
Mhm.
have a seasoned real estate agent behind you, because if you don't, if you have somebody who doesn't understand all these ins and outs and does not protect the buyer, does not protect the seller, doesn't know these things, and have that conversation with your buyer and say, hey, this is so important to call Tara, to call your title company.
Mhm.
Um, it is, I mean, it could be the difference between losing all of your money.
Yeah. I still see sometimes wire instructions that aren't protected I'm CC on, and they're going through in a PDF, and I'm like, oh gosh, and I just told them all that this wasn't, this is the way you're going to get it secured. You're going to call. And so then immediately I pick up the phone and I was like, okay, and hold on, let's verify this together, because it is. Don't, no PDF people. It's
Yeah,
got to be
that's like
secure.
when I have closings with sellers, like have like, and they're like, I'm like, they'll bring me wire instructions that they received from their bank, and I was like, well, where did you get these? How did you, because it's the same way, that's always my biggest fear.
Yeah, just because it's on that piece of paper that has a heading doesn't mean it's real. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely the internet, a wild west, trying to steal your money for sure. So, what are all those documents people are signing at closing, and why are there so many?
So for the buyer, the majority of those documents, I know it's kind of funny you said that because today the person who I referred to earlier who closed literally had a first, second, and a third mortgage because it's one of those loans. So I am not exaggerating. It was this thick of a closing package. But so what those documents are, the loan documents or the borrowing documents, and they're a bunch of what I always just say legalese of like making sure you're ensuring that you're going to be paying that lender back their money because they're making a huge investment and they're loaning you a large sum of cash to buy that house. And the joke is like every single one of those documents I always say is like some lawsuit that's ever happened in the past because some of them some of them are just out there and they don't, they're kind of but the majority of them, you're going to have the most important ones. Your initial, the note, which is your borrowing document. You're going to be promising that lender you're paying your money back. You're going to have your mortgage, which is what gets recorded with the county, and that's going to let us know or anybody know in the future you actually have a loan against your house. And then the rest of the documents are going to be what the lenders just require in order to lend you that money. So that's going to be more of a lender question, but I mean, I know them all like the back of my hand because I've seen them 1,000 times, but to me, those are the two, of course, most important ones. And then as a seller, those are going to be the documents we create. The most important one on those, of course, is going to be your warranty deed. That's going to be the actual document you're signing. That's going to be transferring ownership from your name into the buyer's name. So that's what gets recorded with the county as well. That gets recorded prior to the mortgage. That's going to transfer ownership over to the new owner. That document's extremely important to be done correctly. That's why another reason title is so important, because if you some people just drop their own deeds and you do it incorrectly, huge issues in the future. I mean, something as simple as having a legal wrong, a vesting wrong. When I say vesting, there's different ways you can vest. I had an issue not too long ago where somebody had vesting correctly. They were vested in what's called joint tenants, which means two people are vested in that property together. It could be a married couple, doesn't matter what, how you're married together. And
Mhm.
or that you don't have to be a married couple, it could be partners, whatever. It just means two people are vested into that house together. And if one was to die, the property immediately goes to the other without having to deal with probate or an estate. And the other way you can vest is what's called tenants in common, where two people are in that property. And if one was to die, the property then has to go, their half would go to probate. So a lot of times people who are like partners, like if you're, buying an investment house together and you don't want your half to go to your partner, you want it to go to say like your children or whatnot, you would do tenants in common. But I had a situation where somebody did their own deed. They didn't know what they were, thought they were trying to do something correctly. they took them out of joint tenants and they did a special warranty deed. And in the sense, when they did that, they created a huge probate situation. And so, again, why it's important to not only that could have been handled if they had maybe like an experienced real estate attorney who done the deed. But I digress. Sorry. You're asking me.
No, that's okay. No, all this is really good information for sure.
Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
title geek. I could go off. So the other documents you're going to be signing are your closing statements. Those are going to go over all of the numbers. To me, that's the most important as well. Really important to go over those prior to closing to make sure everything on those are accurate. You want to make sure all of the invoices, everything that you need to get paid are on there, because it's so much easier to fix something prior to closing than it is to fix things after closing. Not that it can't get fixed after, but it sure is a headache trying to get money back from people than it is to fix it prior to money going out. So
Why are you paying those things? I mean, why do you want to make sure everything's paid before closing or out of closing?
yeah, so the most important things we're paying are going to be, we're paying off sellers' mortgages. So of course we want to pay those because we don't want to have a lien against a property taxes. And in New Mexico, that's really important because we pay our taxes in the rears, which is super confusing to out-of-state buyers. So we're paying taxes that sellers owe for last year. So very confusing, throws people off. In closing, throws off sellers, everybody. So we're always paying last year's taxes. And the reason that's important to pay is because the buyer, of course, isn't going to want to pay the seller's taxes that they owed, even for a couple months of last year. We're going to be paying any invoices if you had any work done on the property and inspections that you had done when you had to, like, say if you had to get a pest inspection done, a home inspection done on the property. And the reason that's important is because all those people, if they're not paid, they could place a lien on that property after closing. And that lien can then cause an issue for that new homeowner.
So because you guys are insuring that deed, you want to make sure everything is paid, and so that no liens or anything could pop
Yeah,
up later.
yeah.
Okay.
So if basically if we didn't pay taxes, could definitely the county could take your property if we don't pay taxes. If we didn't pay the HOA fees, HOAs could place a lien against the property. And those are all could be, I mean, if we didn't take care of, especially those type of things, HOA, taxes, mortgages, things, those all could be claims on the lien. But like say if we never received, say like a roof got repaired and we never received the roof invoice and we didn't know we had to pay a $10,000 roof repair and that roof never got paid off, that roofer could now throw a lien on the property and it was the seller's invoice, but now it's the buyer's problem, sort of. I mean, they could always go after the seller. The seller has to sign what's called an affidavit stating that there are no such liens, but who wants to deal with that after they just bought a new house and they'll have to go to court and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, it's a huge responsibility that you guys take on with all of that. So is there anything that you would like to, like, any advice you want to give to first home buyers, or what are some of the common questions buyers or sellers ask you? Like anything that you feel like we haven't covered that would be important for the public to know?
I just think that first home buyers, I just think it's important to get into the game. I have such, like, I'm a big, like, my kids, I'm just like big onto them, like, to buy a house, don't pay for rent, don't give your money to somebody else. Like, and I think it's exciting not to be too scared, but to have really good people behind you, to hire the best, like not, don't just hire your best friend who, like try to help. I mean, that sounds, I'm not trying to, but like, I think it's,
I understand. It's a lot of responsibility that we all take on. And it is, I mean, I'm still 31 years into this. I learn something every day, and
yeah,
it's constant.
it's good to have, somebody like you, like an expert behind you to guide you, because it is a really stressful, it's going to be one of the probably the biggest purchase of your life. So, you're starting out in your life and you want to make sure you're not going to make any huge mistakes, and you want to have somebody like to guide you and make sure that you do it correctly. And that's why I think it's really good. And I've always said that, like at a closing, when everybody's like happy and like, oh my gosh, this was so easy, it wasn't that bad. And I always say the same thing, because you had a really good team behind you. meaning you had a great agent, you had a good lender, if everybody works together, you're going to have a really good experience and everything's going to work out well. If you have like one bad will that goes off, it does not go to closing easily. I mean, you have to fight to get there.
Yeah, and you try to predict that, but you can't always. What I always go for is at the end when they're like, "I didn't think it would be this easy. Oh my gosh!" And it's like, yes, that's the goal. Is we want people to feel that way.
Yeah,
'Cause
we
it's
want people to
moving
like
stressful enough.
yeah, yeah. It's the worst. It's like when everyone's just tense and like and then and I try really hard to like make it a calm, especially when I have had closings where people do come in and you can see on their face they're just overwhelmed. They're at their peak, and and I do think one of my favorite parts of our company and our office is we are a smaller office. I love our physical office. It's very warm and inviting, and we have a really small team here. And I think what we're able to offer is a lot more just personal service. We're not just a huge machine. People have like I've seen Monica. She's my closer. I've heard her on the phone with somebody sometimes for an hour just talking to them because you can tell they're overwhelmed, and she will walk them through every tiny little step and hold their hand through everything. And you don't get that everywhere.
Yeah, no. And I like that you guys have a little more flexibility. Like you can look at something instead of just going, okay, no, this is our company policy. You can look at something and go, okay, yeah, we can make this work if we do this. Or, I love the common sense approach and the customer service approach that you all have. It's one of the reasons why I work with you all, for
And it's
sure.
not like it's always should be an immediate no. It's like well maybe we can't, but let's see what we can do. Let's try to figure out a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. You work through it instead of, nope, company policy can't do it.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's because we never know what we're going to be hit with, right? So tell me, when does the property no longer become the sellers, and when does it become the buyers, and when do people usually get their keys?
Yeah. So that happens once after closing. We will then send all the closing documents to the buyer's lender. Well, it depends. It's kind of a joke in this industry. There's never a black and white. There's always, nothing's always exact. But if there's a lender involved, and if this lender requires funding, not all lenders do, but some don't require funding. Some you could just go straight to recording. But if you have to get what's called funding from the lender, you have to send the documents to the lender. They give you what's called funding authorization. Once you have that, you send your documents to the county to record. When I say documents, I mean that deed we were talking about earlier in the mortgage. We e-record. So what that is, we literally just submit it through a thing called Simple File, upload it to the county. Once the county accepts it and they review it, they make sure we did everything correctly. They make sure all the names are right, the vesting's right, the notary stamp's legible. Once the county accepts it and they record it, they give us a recording confirmation. That's when the property is no longer the seller's. As soon as that deed is recorded and there's a document number on it, that property has been transferred from the seller's name into the buyer's name. So that is the official transfer from seller to buyer. And in my opinion, that's when we can then transfer keys. And that's also then when we wire out proceeds. But that part depends on the time. So we will wire proceeds out, but if it's after 3 o'clock, the proceeds sometimes don't hit to the following day. And that's just because we have to deal with the Federal Reserve timing. So anything after 3 o'clock will hit the bank account the following day. But in my opinion, still though, that deed recording is when the property has transferred hands from seller to buyer.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sometimes buyers will always work out, like, somebody's going to stay for a couple of days or what have you. But yeah, generally that's when they get the keys. Buyers don't get keys at closing, they get keys at recording when the property becomes theirs. And so, like you said, if everybody closes like in the afternoon, then it's probably going to be the next day. Usually a good rule of thumb, I think, is safe. If everybody closes before noon, then probably but it depends on the lender as well.
Yeah, if everyone's before noon, I can almost guarantee it'll happen that day. I've had it to where, we could push it after 2, but that gets a little squeaky. That's when we're having to really pull some strings. So I really, really, if everyone wants keys and funding that day, because what happens is like sometimes people are like wanting it to happen that day, but they don't realize we might be in closing, so it's really important the time of day that you schedule your closing.
Yeah, because closing, I mean, there's a lot that happens to get that deed recorded after both parties sign.
Yeah.
And sometimes, shh, don't tell everybody, but sometimes we can set up sellers to close the day before.
Yeah.
So in case they're like, I don't get off of work until 4, right? But this has got to happen. And
As
so
long as
sometimes
it's
we
not
can
an
close it.
MFA loan.
Oh, yeah, not an MFA loan. Not an MFA, sorry.
Yeah,
Shh,
I
don't
know.
tell anybody. But yeah, that's what I like about it. It's, usually there's ways we can work it. So Tara, are you paying that final water bill in Albuquerque, and are you paying the other utilities, or when should people do that? I'd put those in their names.
Yes. So we pay the funnel water in Albuquerque only. So if you're in Rio Rancho, you're going to be dealing with the water bill the same way you're going to be dealing with gas and electric. So Albuquerque water is billed to the property, so it's unlike any other utility. So it's billed to the actual residents. The only other places where we handle water as well is Cetus. They have final water bills, and also up in the mountains like Intranosa and whatnot. But other than that, utilities like P&M, gas, the seller's going to want to call and have that transferred into the buyer's name, and the buyers are going to call and have it put into their name, and then they're going to get a final bill. But the water itself, all you're going to do as a seller is call and have autopay set up, turned off, and then the buyer, you really can't do anything until they receive our check. So it's kind of frustrating sometimes because we have to send it snail mail. Takes usually a few days. Once they receive our check, then they know there's been a transfer of ownership, and then you can usually set up, that new water bill.
Yeah, which can take sometimes the city 2 weeks to get it together with
Yeah,
that.
and it's never actually technically ever in your name. It's always you always see on your bill it just says current resident.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And yeah, the city of Rio Rancho, you oftentimes you have to have that final closing statement, which is your balance statement. You'll get it closing before they switch the water. So yeah. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit, talk about Albuquerque because we. So I'd like to ask you a little bit. So what does Albuquerque mean to you? Like you spent your whole life here. Tell me why.
So I love Albuquerque. I'm probably, like I said, I was born and raised, but my parents lived here too. I I never really had that urge like everybody else does to move. I had for a while, my 20s, I really wanted to go to Colorado like my kids did. Right now, I have a couple up there, but because I love snowboarding and I love winter sports. But I just love everything about our food, our culture, love the weather. Would have loved a little bit more winter this year. I was a little disappointed with that, but it's beautiful right now. So,
Yeah, great.
but everything, I think we have a hidden gem here. I really think Albuquerque's so special. We have our problems like every other city, and I think we're a little, definitely work on those. But the thing I love the most about Albuquerque is its people. Everyone's so kind and sweet and gentle to each other and helpful. I notice that like when I go and visit like my son, he lives in Denver, which they say how friendly Denver is. And it was kind of funny. We're making a joke because we're driving around and I'm like waving to people and people just give me this look like, why are you waving to me? And it's like, well, that's what we do here. It's part of our culture of how, you just are friendly to one another and helpful. And then obviously, the standard answer to that is our food. You can't beat our food. I go away for like 2 days and I'm craving Mexican food. I need to have it in my life. But
Yeah, right. Gotta have that. You gotta have that chili. I know I had some folks down from Denver that were considering moving here, and one thing they commented, they're like, we didn't realize how dirty Denver had gotten compared to Albuquerque. And Albuquerque is a pretty clean city, and I was like, well, and I think that's just a
oh, that's
population.
true. I did notice that too when I was up in Denver. It's, because I had been up there not like maybe 10 years ago and it was it has changed a lot of places. And then we were in the Bosque just there like a couple weekends ago and it was just so, that's when I really reflected on just how beautiful it is here. It's just, you could 5 minutes you're in the Bosque, 5 minutes you're in the foothills, half an hour, 45 minutes you're in Santa Fe, an hour. It's like you could have all these different places that you could go that are so close by. TRC is not, I love hot springs. You could, or go for the Haynes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of, if you're willing to venture out, there's so many things to see and do. I love spending an afternoon in Old Town, walking around all the cute stores, going having wine at nights. I mean, there's so many fun things. Just sitting out on the patio, playing a game. It's a beautiful place. It really is. I think it's really special. I love paddleboarding on the river. Hopefully we'll have some river water. No, I think it's going to be a very short season this year, but
Yeah, I know not a lot of snow melt from Colorado this year. I know I was thinking about that too. It's like, oh, the river's not going to be as full to paddleboard. So, what do you think is something that it maybe people misunderstand about Albuquerque, or what do you think that maybe a not true representation of?
well, I mean, obviously, what comes to everybody's mind is immediately you think about crime, you think about Breaking Bad, you think about all of that. I think and I mean, I'm not saying obviously we have, anyone who knows me, we have that problem, but it's also, though, I think the community is so grateful and helpful to people who have dealt with that in our lives. Like, I can speak personally from somebody who has dealt with it firsthand.
Mhm.
People are just very loving here and helpful, and I don't know how I'm trying to put it into words, but like, even if you've dealt with it, the love and support that you have from your fellow Albuquerqueans is it's amazing. It's an amazing community.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. So, is there a small business or a local spot you wish more people knew about, like a hidden gem?
Yeah, but I'm not going to say what they are. No, I'm joking. They're hidden.
Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
It would be crowded.
Let me think. Where was I just the other day that I was like, this is so cute? Oh, I went with our good friend Susan. It's not a hidden gem. I don't think it's probably a hidden gem, but it was so cute. We had the nicest afternoon. We went to the Canteen Brew House and we were sitting out on the patio, and it's down off of, I can't think. And I was like, this is so nice. I guess they have like music on Thursdays and Sundays, and they have a really nice patio. You can bring your dogs because I love my dogs. So I was like, that was super nice. Just all of our patios. I'm a patio lover. This is my favorite time of year. So this is when I'm
Yeah.
like peak
We,
happy.
I mean, gosh, we do have some great patios, and it's like we get to use our patios 3 seasons a year. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So find me a patio and nice cold beer, and I'm a happy girl.
Anything that first time people visiting Albuquerque for the first time shouldn't miss.
Shouldn't miss. I think go for a walk on the Bosque,
Hmm.
definitely. Make sure you find like the little hidden beaches in there. Pack a picnic. I love, like I said, mentioned earlier, I know it's touristy, but not in my opinion. I think they need more tourists. I think you need to go to Old Town. There's so many wonderful stores and vendors there. I love, especially now that you have like all these really cute restaurants. Let me think. What are the other places I always love to go and take place people when they come out of town? I used to love going up in the foothills. I've been mad. I haven't been doing the foothills walk that much lately.
Yeah.
I'm just lazy.
Going up the tram, I think, is always fun too. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, what would you like to see? What would you like Albuquerque to become in the next 10 to 20 years? Like, what do you want our future to be?
That's such a funny question because I always like in the real estate industry, obviously, you want growth because that's our business.
Hmm.
But it's also kind of funny because I love it being, not, I don't want it to become the next Denver. Last time I was in Denver, oh my gosh, it's just so packed and crazy and too many people there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want it to grow. I want people to find us and find how beautiful and what an amazing city this is. And I think the more money that comes into the city, the more industry that comes into the city, businesses that come here, the better it will become. I think that's what we need. But I also don't want it to grow too big to where it loses its charm because I think that's what makes it so special.
Yeah, no, I have the same problem too, right? It's like we like growth, we like industry to come, but at the same time we want to keep it Albuquerque. And I think we always will. It's like doesn't matter movie industry, it doesn't matter if we grow, we're still gonna do it our way. You know what I mean? We're still gonna have our flavor.
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
and Nob Hill. I was thinking about Nob Hill too. That's the other place. Yeah, you gotta like go down Nob Hill and all the street art. Oh my gosh, our street art is really great. And
We really
oh,
do have good street art.
tomorrow we should do that. We gotta go to the art walk.
Oh yeah, the first Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Oh, okay. That sounds good. So Terry, thank you. Thank you for your time. I think this has been a helpful conversation. I think that closing and like your job and everything is a bit of a mystery. So I think that this has helped folks understand it. And I think you help make it feel approachable, and for that I appreciate you. I want people to be confident in this, and going, okay, it's not like just this mystery, it's something that we can get through together. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your hard work and taking the time, and I know you probably have to get back to those 300 emails, so thank you. And again, so
Probably.
special. So again, I'm Jennifer Wilson with Living Albuquerque, and until next time, live well, live birthday. Thank you for listening to Living Albuquerque. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share it with someone who loves Albuquerque or is thinking about calling it home. Until next time, live well, live birthday.